Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most important ideas in all of science. But it's also the surprising, almost unbelievable story of the two men who discovered it at the exact same time.
So our story kicks off back in 1859 with a book. Now only 1,250 copies were printed for its first run. And get this, every single one was snapped up on the very first day.
And that book, On the Origin of Species, did a whole lot more than just sell well. It basically challenged everything people thought they knew about life on Earth. As one account put it, it kindled a raging fire of argument, a fire that you could say is still burning today.
But an idea this big, this world-changing, it doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Nope, this one started decades earlier with a long, grueling journey and a young naturalist named Charles Darwin.
You know, the absolute turning point in Darwin's life was this 5-year voyage he took around the world. He was the ship's naturalist, which basically means his job was to study all the strange and wonderful plants and animals in these far-off places. And, well, he was about to start gathering some very, very powerful clues.
Everywhere he looked, a weird pattern started to show up. In South America, he dug up fossils of these giant, extinct animals that looked suspiciously like smaller living ones. Then, in the Galapagos Islands, he found 14 totally distinct types of finches, each with a beak that was perfectly shaped for its island's food. It was like life wasn't fixed. It was changing.
And that led him to the huge mystery that he would spend the next 20 years of his life trying to solve back home in England. See, he had the what, species change, but he had no idea about the how or the why. Okay, so let's hit pause on Darwin's story for just a second. Because half a world away, another English naturalist was, completely unknowingly, on the exact same trail, piecing together the very same puzzle.
His name was Alfred Russel Wallace. He was about 14 years younger than Darwin, came from a less privileged background. But you know what? Their lives and what they were passionate about were remarkably similar. Both traveled the globe, and both were absolutely obsessed with that same fundamental question.
While he was out working in the East Indies, Wallace had his own aha moment. He noticed this sharp, totally invisible boundary that separated the animals of Asia from those of Australia. And that line, which we still call Wallace's line today, was just more proof that geography plays this incredibly powerful role in shaping how life evolves.
So, here we are. We've got two men on two different continents looking at the same kinds of evidence and asking the same exact question. And what's truly mind-blowing is how both of them, completely independently, found that final piece of the puzzle in the exact same place.
It turns out both Darwin and Wallace read this famous book by an economist, T.R. Malthus. Malthus argued that populations, people, always grow way faster than their food supply can keep up. And that leads to this constant, brutal struggle for existence. For both of our naturalists, reading that was like a light bulb going on. They realized, wait a minute, this struggle for existence happens to all living things. And in that struggle, any tiny random advantage, a slightly thicker coat, a sharper beak, better camouflage, that could be the difference between surviving long enough to have kids or dying out. Nature itself was selecting the winners.
Think about it like this. Take a bunch of dogs. In a super cold place like Alaska, the ones that just happen to be born with slightly heavier coats, they're going to do better and they'll have more puppies. Over thousands of years, the whole population gets shaggier. And of course, the exact opposite happens down in Mexico. The environment selects the traits that work best.
But here is where the story gets really dramatic. Darwin, see, he was super meticulous. He started writing his big book way back in 1844, and 14 years later, he was still working on it. Wallace, on the other hand, had this flash of insight while he was sick with a fever, scribbled his entire theory down in just 2 days, and popped it in the mail. And who did he send it to for feedback? Of course, he sent it to the most famous naturalist in England, the only other person in the entire world who had already, in secret, figured out the exact same idea. Can you even imagine? Darwin opens this envelope and starts reading Wallace's paper. He was, in his own words, completely thunderstruck. It was his theory, his own thoughts, sometimes even using similar language, all written down by a man he barely knew from halfway around the world. Now, what happened next could have been this bitter, ugly scientific rivalry over who got the credit. But instead, it actually became this amazing model of scientific integrity that would change biology forever. A panicked Darwin could have just hidden Wallace's work, rushed his own book to the printer. But he didn't. He was a true scientist. He immediately passed the paper on to his colleagues, and they arranged for a joint paper, signed by both men, to be presented to London's prestigious Linnean Society.
So their great advance wasn't inventing the idea of evolution. I mean, other people, including Darwin's own grandfather, had speculated about that before. No, their revolution was providing a logical, evidence-backed mechanism for how it all happens: natural selection. They turned a vague idea into a real science. But even this incredible revolutionary theory had one major piece of the puzzle missing: a giant hole in their reasoning that neither Darwin nor Wallace could ever quite figure out.
They understood that favorable traits were inherited, right? Shaggy dogs have shaggy puppies. That part was obvious, but they had absolutely no idea about the mechanics of how that happened. The science of genetics just didn't exist yet.
And here's the final, incredible irony of the whole story. The answer, the basic laws of heredity, was actually discovered by a monk named Gregor Mendel, just 6 years after Darwin's book came out, but his groundbreaking work just sat there, obscure, in a library, completely undiscovered until the year 1900.
So I think what you should really take away from all this isn't just the theory itself, it's this amazing story that completely challenges our romantic idea of the lone scientific genius. It's a reminder that sometimes, when all the evidence is out there, great ideas are simply in the air, just waiting for a prepared mind, or in this case, two of them, to finally grasp